Another season is upon us. Freshmen arrive wide-eyed with dreams of future glory, while seniors prepare for their last chance at immortality. There are only a handful of these opportunities in a man's life, a handful of chances to distinguish yourself from the rest. It's on these fields where history is made, where legends begin and heroes triumph. Traditions tell the story of what you represent, of those that forge the legacy you uphold. When you come charging out of the tunnel, 100,000 people will be watching your every move. How you respond to that pressure is what defines you. These are the moments that reveal your toughness, your determination, and your pride. The Roughnecks on the Sooner Schooner. Ralphie charging out of the gate. And Chief Osceola planting his spear. The time has come. Your time is now.
You know, for the average college football fan, there are two different times in a man's life where a grown man cried. That was when the college football video gaming saga made its triumphant return after a decade-plus hiatus, and also the return of Pac-12 After Dark. We have been blessed with that. Once again, we have a jam-packed show tonight. We're talking about our gut reactions from the Pac-12. They released their schedule last night. We're going to dive into that. What do we expect from the boys over in UConn? Can the Huskies really surpass themselves as one of the better G5 teams yet again in year number one under Jason Candle? We'll dive into that as well. And even some bowl game drama. What is going on? We have a jam-packed show, but none of that matters compared to what was just dropped in our laps about an hour ago. Reed, I know you reported it first on your end, man. This is your story to tell. You want to tell the people what happened in the last hour?
So breaking news as of about, 20, 30 minutes ago. Trinidad Chambliss, eighth runner-up in the Heisman Trophy, Ole Miss quarterback, AT's favorite player, is back at Ole Miss. He got granted a injunction by a Mississippi court and a Ole Miss judge, Ole Miss graduate judge, and he is now eligible to play this season. Out of nowhere, forgetting his tonsils removed 3 years ago. Forgetting his tonsils removed and saying he's, quote, too tired to play. He's too fatigued by his tonsillitis. So
this is going to be the move for these freshmen, right? They're going to redshirt a year, second year, have your tonsils removed, and then that's 2 free seasons right there of just pure development. You know, I mean, that seems like the game plan. So crazy ruling. The craziest thing about it to me too is that this morning the NCAA denied him for like a 6th time. And literally we all hear that and we're like, okay, then it's done. You know, Trinidad's not coming back. And then, you know, here we are. It's before even 7 o'clock, before the evening even hits, we find out that he is indeed eligible because of a Mississippi court ruling. Unbelievable. I don't even know what else to say. I mean, it's, you know, I obviously have a pretty big dog in this fight being a Mississippi State fan. So we were cheering pretty hard against that, but I have a lot of thoughts on it. You know, my first main thing for Trinidad, and I'll kind of take a second here to just think about it. Why in the world is he not just going to the draft? I feel like his draft stock's never going to be higher than it is right now. You know, after that Georgia game, I'm sitting here watching him go. I mean, honestly, I never thought he was just an outstanding quarterback, but in that game alone, he took it over and dominated, absolutely dominated. And no one can deny that. made play after play after play. Even when if it was a bad play call, if there was a breakdown, Georgia defensive players in his mouth, and he's making throws down the field. Crazy. But maybe I'll let you guys talk a little bit about it before I get into my main rant. I don't know, Jake, you got anything to say on that?
Yeah, listen, first and foremost, I mean, like AT, I'm I'm not from the heart of the South, so I may not be as passionate about the Southeastern conferences as you are, my man. But I will say this, agree with a lot with what you were saying. I was very surprised to not see Trinidad Chambliss go to the NFL. I thought after the news came out that Dante Moore was going to go and stay at Oregon, I thought Trinidad Chambliss was a clear-cut QB2 with a chance to, last I saw was probably like a second round grade, could maybe even sneak into the first round, depending on what we ended up seeing with, all of these other like NFL teams really needing a quarterback. And I remember that Georgia game very fondly as well. As one of my, a couple of my buddies down south would always say, he put his nuts on his shoulders and he laid it all out there in that Georgia ball game. And, even in that Miami game, he had them in a position to take Ole Miss to the national championship game. So if you want to talk about things from an on-field perspective, or even an SEC fan that's rooting for a team to win the national championship for the first time in a few years, you are ecstatic by this news, obviously. I mean, Trinidad, he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the country in 2026, and he is certainly going to put Ole Miss in a position to be in that not only SEC title hunt, but certainly be back as a national championship contender, so long as Pete Golding can live up to expectations on his end as a head coach.
Right. I mean, and they're going to have a big change in offensive coordinator, which I'm interested to see how that plays out. But they didn't have Lane in the playoff, and he still was able to win, a couple games there and beat Georgia in a way that was unbelievable. If they don't have Trinidad in that game, I don't think they win it. I don't think it was play calling that won them that game. I genuinely think it was his ability to go make stuff happen. So I'll give the kid his props. This is a crazy scenario to me. The biggest takeaway for me is that the NCAA has no power whatsoever. It's crazy that we have a governing body that actually doesn't have any governing power whatsoever. We're talking about the people that set the rules here, not even able to enforce them. And the biggest kicker is what we were talking about right before we started this thing, is that the judge is an OM graduate. He literally went to school there, graduated from there. How can you be more biased? How do you let somebody like that even judge this? It doesn't make any sense. It's the most backwards things I've ever heard. But here we are. And I guess now we just can get ready to watch it. Like you said, Jake, he's going to be probably a Heisman favorite early in the season. I would imagine Kalshi odds are going up right now. I'm sure people are already going to start putting money on him to win. And I don't know, maybe he does dominate next season, but I just do not see his draft stock going up. I think you've got a better group of quarterbacks that are going to be graduating next season. We're talking about Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson this year as the only two quarterbacks that really would have squeezed out over him possibly. And I think a lot of guys would take him over Ty anyway. So I think it's a ridiculous ruling. Not only just for, and I will say, if I'm Trinidad, maybe I do want to stay in college. Maybe I do want to play more, because who doesn't love college football? I could do it for 20 years if I had the opportunity. But it's just not a good look for the NCAA. It's really not at all, because it just proved to everybody today that it doesn't matter what they say. It really doesn't matter that they are the governing body, because at the end of the day, it's just going to be left up to the local courts until this changes. And that's probably the biggest takeaway for me. That's the most upsetting thing for me, is that it really just kind of opened my eyes. And we already knew that, but now it's just solidified into that fact. And I could rant from a Mississippi State perspective, but to take my bias out of it, it does suck to see that from just a fan of the game. We want our NCAA to be able to govern. We want our NCAA to be able to set rules in place. And it gets more into the NIL and the transfer portal and all the stuff that we think that the NCAA needs to step in and be involved in. And now it's like, do we even want them to? Can they even do anything about it? And I think that's kind of just the telltale here, is that the NCAA has been really, really badly disrespected in this whole process. So
I think another thing we're not including in this conversation that I personally was thinking about as soon as I saw this news break, last time I checked, these are student athletes. And I know you've said this before, AT, on a previous show. Like, we're just completely glossing over the fact that these are still young adults, kids just graduating out of high school, already making millions of dollars. They have no idea what to do with this money. They have no idea what they're going to do with their lives after football is done. Like, you go to college to get a degree first, and then you have the benefit of playing football, potentially going to the NFL and stuff like that. We are glossing over the fact that these are student athletes first. That blows my mind, that something we're not even, considering anymore with these kids. Another thing for me is, especially for Ole Miss fans, that, personally to me, Kawan Lacey is also coming back. So you get that two-headed monster out of the backfield. You get Trinidad's playmaking ability and one of the best running backs in the country, led the country in touchdowns. So, I mean, that Ole Miss offense already looks probably, twice as better, because they were probably going to have Deuce Knight starting at quarterback for all things considered from now. And now that Trinidad is coming back, I mean, exactly like Jake said, Ole Miss is back in the conversation to, be competing for the SEC next year. It all falls on Pete Golding's shoulders. If he can if he could replicate that magic he had in the playoff, whatever voodoo was going on in that building, keep it up, because it obviously was working. So, again, it's blasphemy that we're at a point where the biggest storylines in the offseason isn't about, where a 5-star prospect is going. That is cool, but it's not the headline anymore. The headline is, what player is suing the NCAA for their 6th, 7th year of eligibility? Like, what petition are we filing against the NCAA for, an injunction for a player to, get an extra year eligibility? It's getting ridiculous. It's out of control.
Yeah, it's completely out of control, and really the person and entity that's taking the biggest L in all of this is the NCAA. Now, I don't fancy myself as a lawyer by any means, but I did watch Suits, and I watched clips and bits and pieces of Suits LA, to my fortune or misfortune, depending on how you want to take that. Okay, if I heard that the person that's presiding over my case is from the same exact institution that the student athlete is trying to get his extra year of eligibility, they go to the same school, or they graduate from the same school, that's an immediate recusal for me. I'm very surprised, and I don't know if the NCAA actually tried this or not. I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of the case, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. Okay, but what I will say is, if the NCAA didn't even try to get this judge recused and to get somebody else that maybe would have a little bit less of a conflict of interest from that fan perspective, then, I mean, that's a massive loss by the NCAA. This should have been an open and shut case, okay? I had my tonsils removed. All 4 tonsils were removed at the same time when I was in my college days. In my college athletic prime, I was a college athlete. Down for 1 week. Now, I don't know about you guys, but and we've seen players get an extra year of eligibility because of a significant injury, and I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. I think if you do suffer a significant injury where, as a result of that, you do miss the vast majority of your season, and it's clear cut, then yeah, I think an athlete should be able to get an extra year of eligibility from that. But at the same time, though, and Trinidad's probably a tougher guy than I am, I was only down for a week. If that, you're telling me that Trinidad probably missed 1 game tops at Ferris State?
It's crazy. It's crazy to think that that's literally what made this whole ruling go through too, is tonsillitis. Like, you would think it's a broken ankle or an ACL tear or something. And when you look into it, you're like, he was sick. He was sick. He had something. I mean,
drugs.
Yeah, I mean,
drugs.
It's crazy. Right.
It's drugs. He was on drugs.
I mean, who knows at this point? It could be anything. I mean, we could just start making up stuff and getting eligibility for it, medical eligibility for it. I mean, mental health, mental well, or whatever. That's going to be the next thing we talk about. I don't feel mentally well this season, so I need to come back and play again next year. But to your point, Jake, if you look up conflict of interest in the dictionary, that was the textbook definition of it. I mean, come on. And it's just crazy to me that we're sitting here even having this conversation. And yet again, one of the biggest kicks in the face back to the NCAA is that there is literally no standard across the board. Some guys get eligible, some guys don't. We got a guy playing in his 7th year for Alabama, and then Diego Pavia was actually kind of in a similar spot as Trinidad Chambliss, and he doesn't get eligibility anymore. So it's really ridiculous to think that it can happen like that. When, you know, if we are going to let Trinidad do this, then Diego should be able to come back. Then a lot of these other guys that haven't got eligibility should be able to come back. Do I think they should? Absolutely not. But it's the way that it ruled for Trinidad, so why can't it rule the same way for those guys? You know, it's just an insane time. I mean, you got the whole thing with Charles Bideko at Alabama going on right now. He just got kicked out, you know, and we just got to have some sense of standard, and we got to have a governing body that can actually govern the daggum sport that we watch, in my opinion. So
with no biases towards the team, they have to be a neutral party. They got to be from a third party. Like exactly. you get some law firm or, you know, overseeing body to, you know, deal with these cases, because we can't have other instances where we just get a fellow grad of the university just going automatically in favor. He was in his chambers for less than an hour and then came out with an hour and a half long statement. You're telling me he came out with an hour and a half long statement? I don't know how many pages it was in less than an hour. Also, props to Trinidad's legal team providing over 90 documents of medical findings and just basically propping up his case. Over 90 pages of medical evidence, basically saying he was on drugs.
The lawyers did their job. We know that.
Yeah,
they got their
hey, props to them.
Yeah.
Props to
them. I'm not blaming Trinidad. I'm not blaming Ole Miss at all, because if I was Trinidad and I was at Ole Miss and I wanted him to return to college football, as an Ole Miss guy, I would have made the exact same argument, and I would be advocating for the exact same thing. So, I mean, I'm not blaming either of them so much so as I'm blaming more so of a situation that it's gotten to a point where it's even allowed to happen. So, I mean, that's where we're at. This is a great for Ole Miss, and this is great for the SEC's chances in general to get back to the national title game and win a national championship. But in terms of the sport and creating opportunities for high school athletes to get an opportunity to initially play at the FBS level, I mean, this is a rough day for them. That's for sure.
No doubt. And it sucks to see this happen for somebody when it can't happen for yourself. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of kids that are heartbroken by this ruling, because they wonder why not me, you know? And yeah, it just, we got to have a standard. We got to have something in place that changes this. And it's, you know, it's exactly what you were saying, Jake. We just, something has to change. Something's got to be fixed. I mean, it just, if we keep up this route, then sports, collegiate sports as we know it, is going to continue to be the Wild West. And we're never going to know what's going to happen. We're never going to know where the ruling is going to be. We're never going to know if a kid can play for 6 years or 7 years or 5 years or 4. And so something's got to change. I don't know what that is. It seems like it's going to have to happen, unfortunately, at the government level, at the federal level. But as of right now, you know, we're just kind of stuck in limbo, and we're going to have a lot of these discussions about more players in the future, which I guess is good for the show. But I don't know how good it is for college football. So,
all right. With that being said, we are about 20 minutes into the show. I mean, you know, Trinidad took a lot of the spotlight, so much of the spotlight that you guys don't even know this. For those of you that are just tuning in for the first time, or maybe you're coming in a little late, we have an actual show here tonight. But definitely some breaking news here on the show tonight. Trinidad Chambliss granted his 6th year of eligibility. He will be returning to the Ole Miss Rebels here during the course of the 2026 campaign. But we still have an incredible show tonight in spite of that. Hopefully you guys are excited for it. You know, make sure you do a couple of things for it, whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or even on Twitter right now. Make sure you hit that like button or hit that follow/subscribe button, depending on where you're watching from. But in the meantime, boys, I don't know about you, but as a grown man, I cried last night. You know why I cried last night? Pac-12 after dark football. We're
back. Back, baby. We're back.
We're so back.
Is back. We love it.
Let's go.
And before we dive into, you know, who we think our takeaways for this for the Pac-12 in the schedule review that we had last night. I mean, this is a story about resilience. You think about what happened to the Pac-12. The conference literally disintegrated out of thin air. But instead of Oregon State and Washington State going their separate ways and maybe trying to be a refuge in the Mountain West or one of these other conferences in college football, they decided to stay. And they decided to rebuild from the ground up. And it took a couple of years to get to this point. But, man, Pac-12 After Dark football is back. And I got to say, they have a pretty interesting scheduling format with the flex schedule. And I'm just curious from you guys, what you guys think of that flex schedule in that flex week that they had towards the end of the season?
I like it.
I do too.
I think they missed an opportunity though, and I saw this on Twitter. I wasn't even thinking about this at first. They easily could have made it like a mini playoff to see who goes to the conference championship. You could have done a 1v4 and 2v3, and those two winners go to the championship game. I didn't even think about that. You could have done that, but the flex, I never even thought about that. Wait, other power conferences, what are we doing?
What are we
just
doing?
make it. Just make. I mean, you literally could do it in a format with all these teams that have 16, 18 teams in them. You could literally take the top seed in your conference playing the bottom seed and vice versa. Like, you get what I'm saying. Like, you could have just done that instead of having a set schedule. But then again, rivalry games and everything that factors into that, it would be hard to do. So it's interesting. I definitely wasn't expecting it when I first saw it.
No, this is a good move by the Pac. We've kind of been giving them slack recently, and I think this was a good move for them. It's all about marketing your conference now for them. And that idea on Twitter looks like it came from, we got V-Dub in the chat here, which was a genius idea. I think that was, have your 1v4 team play, have your 2v3 team play, have your bottom of the barrel teams play for that one last chance to get a win at the end of the season against somebody that they might have lost to. And you did mention it does kind of hurt rivalries, but I feel like this is going to be something that will. It hurts. It's hard to do it in other conferences because of rivalries. But for the Pac, I feel like this is going to create rivalries. Think about barely beating somebody in the beginning of the season, and then that team gets a chance to come back at the end. That's going to be some fan bases that are ready to go at each other. This is fun stuff. This is the type of stuff that makes college football fun. The uniqueness of it, the interestingness of it, the not every conference is the same. Nothing is the same. This is, yet again, not a business. This is what we love about college football. So, like you said, Jake, we're crying because we're excited that the Pac is back. And I couldn't be more pumped about it. I'm ready to stay up till 2 a.m. again watching football. That's what it's all about. So,
also, it's great because it's one of the few conferences that are left where every team in the conference plays each other.
Right.
We don't. Yes. That's such a rare thing in college football nowadays. So that's what's beautiful to me, seeing every team being able to play each other in the game. It's awesome.
Great point. Because you're gonna know who the best team in the conference is at the end of the season.
It'll be clear. Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that we ran into last year was in terms of the conference tiebreakers, in terms of, okay, we gotta go ahead and, all right, common opponents isn't gonna really work. Like, all right, we're gonna use a computer model to determine who goes to our conference championship, or we're gonna have a we're going to use like the college football playoff rankings, which, the CFP committee just does a perfect job, clearly, especially when it comes to ranking like G5 / like G6 teams, like during the month of November. And it's something that we would see more often down to the FCS level, or really any other level of college football, really, where you will see every team play each other in a round robin style. Some in particular in Division III, you see that happen a lot more often because of the size of the conference. But here at the FBS level, unless I'm mistaken, really the Pac-12 is going to be the only conference that does that. So we're going to get to a point where you don't even need to worry about tiebreakers. It's going to be who beat who on what day, and that's going to be your tiebreaker. It makes things so simple. It makes things so easy. And I couldn't be more stoked about it. And it makes me hopeful that maybe we do see a trend eventually where we do see smaller conferences pop up, because it just makes things so much easier in terms of conference title pictures.
Yeah, I agree. It sounds like, Jake, you're talking about this is how it's supposed to be. I mean, we're supposed to know who the best team is, and it makes sense. And it's hard to say that anything in this game makes sense anymore. And finally, finally we can say some good stuff about the Pac. I'm glad they're doing things the right way. They're keeping our sport interesting, and it gives us some good college football to watch. These are going to be some good teams, some electric type West Coast offense teams. I don't know how much defense is going to be getting played in that conference, but we don't want to watch defense in the Pac-12 anyways. So.
I think the last point I wanted to make about this, it also brings back the regionality. The Pac-12 is full of teams, except for Texas State, really, teams that are on the West Coast, which is what conferences should be. It has to be a regional, aspect to conferences, and that's what's beautiful about it. Every team is on the West Coast except for Texas State, which I don't even have a problem with Texas State being in there because I think they're a good fit in this conference.
Yeah, I agree. And they're still on the west side, kind of.
They're in Western Texas. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, like you said, it makes sense, which is hard to say anymore. So
yeah, just roll the clip of the NCAA 14 conferences where they're all perfect and like the WAC is still around and everything like that. Like,
which I'm currently pulling for a WAC comeback. Maybe like Idaho could lead the way. A man could dream, right? But while I've lament and dream about the Kibidona coming back to the FBS ranks, let's go ahead and bring ourselves over to our big board. So how we're going to kind of attack the Pac-12 schedule reaction. We're going to take a hard look in terms of every one of us. We're going to give ourselves who we think is going to be our biggest winner, who's going to be our biggest loser, and then maybe even a team that's going to tickle or pickle a little bit more now that we have seen this schedule release, now that we know who's going to be playing who, especially the flex games where we do have tentative matchups in terms of who we think that flex game is going to be, but that's always subject to change though. So, with that being said, AT is the newer guy on the show. You want to go first, my man?
Yeah,
let
absolutely.
People know what you're thinking.
Absolutely. So this, the biggest winner, I guess, is kind of where I'll start. It's tough. I wanted to go Washington State. They got gutted, so I really do not know what to expect out of them going into next season. I'm still leaning them just because I want to go with either Oregon State, which they had a terrible season, so you can't go them with the biggest winner, or Washington State, with them being the true Pac teams, the ones that stayed around. I am going to be cheering for those two teams to be good because they deserve it. They stayed around when times got tough, and now they're hopefully able to pave the way for what we wanted all along. But just looking, outside looking in, I'm really excited about San Diego State and Boise State being in here. I think San Diego State's got the best chance. I think they're going to have a good football team this season. They've had good football teams in the past. They were the third best team in the MWC last year. And going into this season, you do have Boise State, San Diego State, and Fresno State. They were all 9-win teams. So these are going to be three good teams, three teams that can compete for it. I think any one of them could win it. But I am just kind of leaning towards SDSU right now. I feel like they've got kind of the biggest momentum, the most momentum behind their program. And so I think that they're going to have a good chance to really dominate this conference and stay out on top. I think that's kind of where my head's at when it comes to them and moving forward. I think they're going to be an exciting team to watch. And they really do fit that West Coast style, big time explosive play type offense. And so they're going to be a lot of fun to watch next season. I guess I can go ahead with the next two too. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, so the biggest loser, I hate to do it. I hate to do it to them. I think Oregon State, like I said, I'm going to be cheering for them, but I just don't have a lot of faith in them. They didn't really recruit well. I think they've gotten a couple positions here and there that they can kind of add to. I'm not bought in on them. I love the Beavers. I think it would be awesome to have a team with the mascot as the Beavers, be a great football team. I love the orange and the black. I'm just not pumped on them. They did not look good last year. I tried to watch them, try to keep up with them, and every time it was just a disappointing game for me. And so I feel like they're kind of stuck in limbo right now. I do think this is good for them. I think money-wise, I think competition-wise, I think like getting eyes on their program again. I think it's good that they're having some teams join the pack with them. But outside of that, I'm not sold on them. And this was tough because Utah State didn't have a great year either, and I really I'm not expecting much out of them, but I think it's going to be tough for the Beavs. And I'll be honest, I'm a big Beav fan because I ran a dynasty with them and dominated, so it's tough for me not to cheer for them. But I am not excited about them. And then the team to watch for me is going to be Boise State. If it's not San Diego State, it's got to be Boise State. Yet again, they were fourth in the NWC last year, 9-win team. They've got a lot of momentum. I think the blue field is awesome. And so I think they've got a good fan base over there, and I am excited about what they can do moving forward this year.
Yeah, man, and I definitely feel the the resentment in terms of pulling for Oregon State. We always have those those types of teams that we're pulling for because of an NCAA dynasty. Because I know a couple of years ago, I ran the Texas State dynasty with me and a couple of my buddies. So because those uniforms are absolutely fantastic out there in San Marcos, Texas. Got to show love to the Bobcats. Really some clean uniforms over there. It's going to be really fascinating to see how each team performs over a course of the year. And one thing that I do want to say about the Pac-12 as well, that I do want to mention, Reed, we kind of talked about this, talked about Texas Tech's schedule and their perceived strength of schedule based on how each team's performed back in the 2025 campaign this past college football season. Something that I thought about, and I want to get your guys' thoughts before I kind of unveil my biggest winners and losers. I actually think from a strength of schedule standpoint, the majority of these teams in the Pac-12 actually may have a stronger strength of schedule than Texas Tech.
Yeah, when I was calculating the combined opponent records from the conference, a lot of them are pretty similar. The only one that really stands out is Oregon State, but you're factoring in their two non-conference opponents of Houston and Texas Tech, which combined for 20 plus wins between them. So that plays a big factor in it. Boise State's also is up there, but holistically, the conference is pretty comparable to each other. There's a few outliers, Boise State, San Diego State, like AT said, but the conference is pretty top to bottom. It's pretty competitive, all things considered. So compared to a strength of schedule to Texas Tech, I don't think any team in the country will remotely be close to their strength of schedule because goodness gracious, talk about a cupcake schedule. But anyway, I think the overall the conference is pretty comparable to each other. There's not really one team that stands out head and shoulders above the rest to me.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple more points I'll make too. Boise State does pull, I feel like, some of the harder non-conference opponents. They got Oregon. They've got it was also, I know there was somebody else that Memphis, which is a good football team. They're a good they're a good G5 program. They've got some money and they've got some guys coming in. And I feel like San Diego State is not, they don't have that going for them. I feel like they've kind of got an easier route. I agree with everything you said, Reed. I think that it is very comparable schedules across the board. But I feel like when you're looking outside of the conference, I feel like San Diego State's got a little bit of an easier route. They did pull James Madison, but I'm not as sold on them losing that game as I am Boise State to a Memphis or to an Oregon. So, and one comment I will make just about one thing I think is awesome. I think it's great that Texas State has got 4 non-conference opponents that are all in the state of Texas. We love that. So.
Yeah, everything is bigger in Texas, and really to build on your point, AT, about Boise State's non-conference schedule. Not only do they draw Oregon and Memphis, which are two very quality programs in their own right, they do also have to make the cross-country trip out to Kalamazoo, Michigan, to take on Western Michigan, your MAC champions from the 2025 campaign as well. So, Boise State from the get-go is going to have some opportunities to get some quality wins, particularly towards its other G5 counterparts, which is something that the committee does take into account based on what we saw from this past year.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with that being said, boys, I slept on it. I got some quality sleep, the wife and baby, and I've come with my divine vision, and in terms of who I really enjoy as I think is going to be the biggest winner or loser, and a team that I'm paying more attention to now that we've seen the full schedule in front of us. Now, for me, I have Fresno State as the biggest winner over the course of the of this reveal that we do have. Now, they do have San Diego State as the flex option as of right now. San Diego State is a quality program, but when I took a look at their schedules holistically, not only did I take into account what their conference schedule is, but what are they also doing in non-conference play as well? And I think Fresno State, they have a really nice segue in terms of being able to tune themselves up into a fine-tuned machine while also getting some wins early and often. Now, week 1, they're going to have a tough go at it. They're going to take on USC on the road. Jordan Maeva's back. Lincoln Riley is really building something extremely special, relying less and less on a transfer portal. So the USC game is going to be tough, but it's quality competition for Fresno State, though. It'll serve a similar role as the Kansas game in week 0 last year before they use as a springboard to have a solid campaign. But then after the USC game, they're going to have a nice 3-week segue before they have to start Pac-12 conference action. They have Sacramento State. Sacramento State, they got a lot of money, and they're trying to use that money to get into the FBS, but Sacramento State is a team that went 7-5 in the FCS. It's a solid FCS program. I wouldn't say that it's a great FCS program. So that's going to be your home opener. I expect that to be a winnable game for Fresno State. And then your next couple of games here are two teams that either are disappointed or they don't have a ton of talent from a power ratings perspective. Looking at San Jose State, a team this time last year that really was a G5 darling in terms of getting a lot of hype, in terms of possibly being a dark horse Mountain West Conference champion or even making the college football playoff, but then they fell spectacularly, just an absolute disaster class from the Spartans in 2025. Then the Rice Owls as well. They run that triple option offense. But Fresno State, they play a style of football to where if they can get off to a good lead early, they could really put that triple option offense into a blender, not built necessarily to pass the football unless it's in certain situations. So I really like Fresno State and how they're going to be able to use those first 3 to 4 weeks to really warm themselves up before getting into Pac-12 action. But on the flip side of that, I don't think Utah State is going to have that same kind of benefit of the doubt, to say the least. For Utah State, it's a different story. A very difficult non-conference schedule for Utah State, where you go on the road to play against Washington week number 2. You also go on the road to play against Utah. Those are two very good teams out there in the Pacific Northwest that are going to really test Utah State greatly. And then one of their weaker FBS games that they have in non-conference play is the Troy Trojans. That Troy team, mind you, went to the Sun Belt title game. And they actually gave James Madison a pretty good fight, a 4-quarter battle before eventually falling out there in Harrisburg, Virginia. That Troy football program, that is a solid program out there in the Sun Belt. They do have them at home. That's a team that could definitely test them, and it'll be a good measuring stick game between the Pac-12 and the Sun Belt during the course of non-conference play. Oh, by the way, the defending Mountain West champions and a team that has a legitimate shot of winning the Pac-12 in Boise State, that's your current flex partner.
Yeah, the flex is going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how this whole plays out, to be honest. I wonder what I don't even know what to think about it until we get into the season. But yeah, I'm excited for that whole shenanigan, to say the least.
Dude, yeah. And to think we won't even know the flex game until a week prior.
Yeah,
crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, because I saw that it could be changed anytime up to like 6 days before kickoff. So like a week before the actual flex week, they can make some changes and kind of manipulate things to where they can maybe work their way into a better position, which I think when it actually happens in real time, we're talking about how cool it is right now, but when it happens in real time, I think it's going to piss some fans off. Like in the other G5 leagues, we might be loving it now, but may not be loving it nearly as much when it's actually applied in practice and they pull some shenanigans a couple of weeks before the end of the regular season. One team that I'm very curious about, and this was a team I loved how they finished the end of 2025. They are returning their offensive core coming back. Texas State Bobcats, man, I really love this offensive unit that's coming back. If G.J. can figure out that defense. And I'm not even talking about, you don't need to be a world beater on defense. You don't need to have an elite G5 defense if you're Texas State, because I'm that high on that offense. I'm talking about be an average defense and maybe be a little bit on that opportunistic side of things. If you could just do that, this Texas State team, man, can be really good. I really think Texas State could be a dark horse team. And given how things tentatively stand in terms of that flex game as of right now, you do draw Colorado State twice. Colorado State, I think I would make the argument, maybe has the most questions out at any of the teams in the Pac-12 right now, given how rough Colorado State's 2025 campaign ended up turning out. And on top of that, Jim Mora's coming in as a head coach. Colorado State's just a program that's going to have a lot of questions that they need to really prove themselves. And the fact that you get to play them twice, I like the road that's paid for Texas State to really mix things up.
Texas State should be the dominant defensive team in this program too. I mean, that would make the most sense. You know, they're the Southern team out of all these guys. So I feel like you're on the right track there. They should definitely have what I think would be the best defense. And I'll tell you guys something that I think is pretty sad here is that, you know, Oregon State and Washington State were dead last in recruiting in this entire conference. And you know, Boise State and Texas State lead the conference in recruiting right now. Now, it's not like they're out here knocking down huge 4 or 5 star guys, but you know, that's kind of what to watch for right there is in those two teams, the Boise States and the Texas States. They're leading the conference in talent level at least. So,
well, I don't know if you guys took my notes, if I took your notes. Like, I guess great minds just think alike. So, for my 3, my biggest winner was also Fresno State. Exactly to the point you made, Jake. The 3 of the 4 non-conference games they do have are on the lighter side, aside from that USC game. But I think it could be a good test for them up in week 1. You know, going to the Coliseum under the bright lights of Southern California. Like I think it would be a good test. You know, they might not, you know, get the result that they want and hope for, but I think it's a good test for them. And then the other 3, Sac State, San Jose State, and Rice. You know, they're not world beaters by any means. Thank you, Colton, for leaking my notes to the public. I appreciate it. Better than the Epstein files. But anyway, that played a big part of it for me. Also, you get the hardest team in your conference at home in Boise State. I think that plays to their favor. Interesting bye week placement. You get it right in the middle of your season in week 8. So I think that could also play their benefit. Interesting that they get back-to-back road tests in week 10 and 11 at Utah State and Texas State. I think that could be interesting just based on how late back-to-back road games are. But you do finish the season with 2 home games. You get Colorado State and the flex game at home at the end of the season. So I think Fresno State, all things considered, got a pretty manageable schedule, especially they could be – I know Jake was posting about it on Twitter earlier. They could be 3-1 after non-conference play, which is huge going into a conference slate, which again, like we said earlier, a lot of teams are comparable to each other, you know, going on paper, at least going into the season. So I think Fresno State is the biggest winner to me. My biggest loser was Oregon State, AT, but I'm going to go with my second biggest loser. I'm going to go Washington State. Washington State drew the hardest non-conference schedule out of any of the teams in the Pac-12. They opened the season in the Apple Cup against Washington. That's at Lumen Field. Then they go on the road to Kansas State in week 2, which is never an easy place to play in Manhattan. They get Duquesne, which should be a win on paper. Shout out to the Dukes. And then they go on, and then they get Arizona at home in week 4, which Arizona finished the 2025 season on a really high note. No Fafita back at quarterback. Who knows with that team for Arizona. So they drew the hardest non-conference schedule of any team in the conference. And then their first conference game is one of the better teams in the conference in Fresno State, which could also possibly be on a short week. It could be on a Friday night. So Washington State definitely has a tough draw to start the season. You follow that up with 2 road games at Utah State and at Oregon State. Oregon State they're familiar with, but Utah State, I mean, who knows? That could be on another short week. That could be on another Friday night potentially. So you do get the benefit of having Boise State at home, but then on the road to San Diego State, and then your bye week is not all the way until week 10. So you're playing, what is that, 9 straight games until your bye week to start the season, and then Colorado State, Texas State in your flex game. So, and by the way, that Texas State game is on the road. So your last regular season game that you know of is on the road, arguably the longest distance trip in your conference. So I mean, potentially they could be not taking a shot. They could potentially be 1-3 after non-conference play, and then who knows what happens from there. So Washington State, I think, just solely based on their non-conference and not, having the backing of a great recruiting class and the, transfer portal acquisitions, they could be in the gutter very quickly. And then for me, the team to watch, I think it has to be Boise State. Out of every team in this conference, they have the best shot at potentially getting the G5 spot or at the G6 spot. Like, they have the best shot. They've been there before. I think those 2 games to open their season at Oregon and home against Memphis are going to define their season. Also, not overshadowing that Western Michigan game, because that will be cinema. Boise State going out to Kalamazoo. That will be awesome. But I think just their conference schedule after that is very manageable. You get Fresno at home, Washington State at home, Colorado State at home. The most intriguing game on that schedule to me is at Texas State week 9, because you could potentially be 6-1 at that point going on the road to Texas State, which would agree with your guys' points. They could be one of the best defensive teams in this conference. So I think Boise State, just solely based on their history, they have the best chance to be the G5 rep in the playoff coming in the next season, or one of the best chances. So at least out of the Pac-12. So I think Boise State's schedule is, again, manageable. The first 2 games of the season are really going to define it. If they go 1-1, they cannot start the season 0-2.
No,
if they
can't.
If they start the season 0-2, you could chalk it up, to be honest. So if they at least have to go 1-1 in those first 2 games, they cannot pull a Notre Dame, lose the first 2 games, and then hope to make the G5 spot in the playoff. So yeah, those are my 3 teams to look out for in the Big 12.
And it was weird for me because I was kind of going back and forth on Fresno and Boise, and for whatever reason that USC game at Fresno was just standing out to me so much. And then when I look at Boise playing Oregon, I feel like it should have had that same feel, but I felt different about it. I don't know why necessarily, because you got Oregon and Memphis back to back. Those are 2 good teams, but I'm kind of under the impression that they could go 1-1, and I'm kind of under the impression that Oregon is going to overlook them on that first week, and we could end up seeing a good football game there. I'm not saying that Boise State's going to upset them, but I do think it's going to be a lot closer than we thought, and that's kind of why they were on the watch list for me, not just the biggest winner here. And yeah, I think that was kind of what sold it for me, was that I feel there's a confidence level behind Boise State that I don't know if it's unwarranted. I don't know why I have it, but I just feel good about them moving into this conference and being a big team that could possibly win it in the next couple seasons.
Also remember Jake, remember the game 2 years ago when, what was it, week 2? Ashton Genty went off, completely took the country by storm after that. Like, right. Let's not forget that game. Oregon walked out of that game by a field goal. Right. Let's not forget that.
And even a year before that, we saw an FCS team in Idaho go into Autzen Stadium to play this Oregon Duck squad, and it was a 4-quarter game. Oregon was able to win that game, and you were able to pull away a little bit late, but that was a 1-possession game in the 4th quarter, and Idaho truly did have Oregon on the rope. So Oregon, I think all credit to them. I think they're going to be a wonderful football team. They're going to have a lot to say about that Big Ten title picture, as well as a lot to say about that national championship picture. But at the same time, though, I will say this: Oregon's certainly a team that has had its slow starts over the past few years. They have been prone to that to a degree under Dan Lanning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it takes them a while. They're a team that improves throughout the season. Yeah, that's kind of what it was for me, is that I feel like Boise State's going to be ready. That's a game that Boise State's ready for, that they're looking forward to. They can't wait for. And Oregon's like, hey, we're ready to get into, week 4, week 5, week 6. And I think, you can't overlook anybody in this game, especially with the transfer portal now and the way that things are done. There's going to be so much more talent level on these smaller team rosters, and so much less talent on the Oregon type rosters because their depth's gone. Because if you're not playing, you're going to a Boise State or a Fresno State or one of those guys that you can go get some PT at. And so you can't overlook anybody, but teams still do it all the time. And I think that's an easy one for Oregon to overlook. And I just feel like it's a favorable matchup for Boise going into that game, with a good chance to at least compete and make a name for themselves week 1. So
I think this is definitely one of the more underrated week 1 games.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the history of Boise State 2 years ago. Also, this will be Oregon's first game with 2 new coordinators. Oregon did lose both coordinators, Tosh Lupoi and Will Stein. So, I mean, their coordinators could, not be asleep at the wheel, but they could come out flat. They've never called a game by themselves before. So that's something to watch out for. I think also, again, the dynamic of the expectation that Oregon is going to be having coming into the season, especially with Dante Moore coming back. That's a lot of pressure in your first game of the season. So I think one of the more slept on games in week 1, definitely going to have this one circled. So a ton of different factors. Also, let's not forget Boise State laid a dud against South Florida in week 1, or I guess technically, week 1 last year. It was on Thursday. So they don't want to come out flat again in their opener.
Right.
Yeah. So, but we still have so much more to talk about. That's for sure. That is going to be your winners and losers. But before we dive into the rest of the show, we still have a jam-packed show here tonight that we definitely want to provide to you guys. We do want to let you go. Yes, what you're seeing on the bottom ticker, that is very true. Trinidad Chambliss, granted his 6th year of eligibility, he is going to return to Ole Miss for the 2026 campaign. So your eyes do not deceive you. That is, in fact, the truth. But boys, speaking of some teams that just released their schedule and just and getting geared up as well and could set the stage for the G5, UConn was actually one of those teams that did release their schedule as well recently. And I'll say this about UConn. I'm getting ready to pull their schedule up shortly. I look at this schedule that we're about to see unfold right in front of our eyes, and I see a stage where Jason Candle could hit the ground running in his first year up there with the UConn Huskies.
It's going to be tough. They had a great season last year. I mean, obviously it bodes them well to be independent. And I think that they're kind of in that same boat as Notre Dame, where they're a better boat than Notre Dame, because teams do want to schedule them. If I'm a P4 team right now, I'm not scheduling Notre Dame. That's why I even schedule a tough out of conference opponent like that. But yeah, I think it does bode them. But it's going to be tough. I mean, you got James Madison late in the year, Maryland week 2, which is obviously going to have, I think, 2 of the best edge rushers in the country. I know one of them for sure. And then going to Southern Miss, that's a long trip for them. That's a long trip. And Southern Miss did lose their entire team and their coach, their good coach and Coach Huff there. But it's tough. It's tough for me to even really have a good pulse on where UConn's going to be next season. I mean, they were good. They're a basketball school, primarily women's basketball, but they have been better at football these last couple seasons. I genuinely don't know what to expect. I mean, this is one of the only teams that I'm just a complete question mark on. And that's just me being completely honest, for where I stand right now.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that they do need to answer, because they are going to lose 2 incredible talents to the NFL in Skylar Bell, who we're thinking is probably going to be going sometime in day number 2, as well as Joe Vacano, their quarterback. He had an excellent season, has a real chance of being drafted as well. Really, the number one question for UConn, if anything, before anything else, before Jason Candle figures out the rest of his football team, is who is he's going to have at quarterback. He did bring a couple of kids in from the transfer portal, Jake Merlinker, who is transferring in from Tennessee. And then he also brought in Caleb Osborne out of Toledo. He didn't play much over the course of last season, but he did play in the bowl game, played admirably for Toledo in the bowl game. Wouldn't be surprised, because it is Jason Candle's guy, that he did pick out of high school. If he wins the starting job, that's really going to be the number one thing is can they find a way to find the successor for Joe Fagano? That's going to really determine what at least offensively, what their identity is going to be like.
I think Jake Merklinger could be a great fit if he is to be the starter. I think fitting into Jason Candle's system and with offensive coordinator, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Nunzio Campanelli. Campanelli. He runs a pro style / a spread style offense. So I think that Merklinger, coming from the Heupel system that already is a spread type system, I think that he could fit in pretty well if he were to be the starter. But I agree with AT here. They're kind of, at least from everything I gathered in my notes, like they're kind of an unknown right now. They have some spots on their schedule that could be favorable. You do get the tougher teams on your schedule at home. Maryland's at home, Syracuse is at home, North Carolina is at home, James Madison is at home. So the tougher teams on your schedule you do get at home. But again, there's some tough road spots. You have to go out to Oxford, Ohio to play Miami, Southern Miss, like that. I mean, it's not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination, but the harder teams they do get at home. So I think Jason Candle, being the winningest coach in Toledo history, starting a new chapter here with UConn, I mean, the blueprint's there. He did it at Toledo. He brought them to relatively pretty good success for that level of football. And I think the blueprint's there. I mean, I think if you give him time, like you did with Jim Mora, allow him to get some recruits and go heavy in the portal like he has this past cycle, I think they have a chance to make some noise at some point.
Yeah, and this is another team that's like a Toledo 2.0, right? I mean, you know, they got the coach, they got most of their players came over. That's most of their portal guys came from. So and like you said, Reed, like you said, Jake, that he did have success at Toledo with this very similar roster that we're looking at here. I don't think I think some of the competition level is going to be a little bit higher. I think that they've got a couple of tough teams, and you know, North Carolina late in the season stuff. James Madison's going to be one of the better G5 teams in the country. So I mean, it's tough. It's not an easy schedule. It's not just a walk in the park for them. But I am excited for them. I am excited to watch them play, and I hope that they can keep that level of success that they had this last season. Because I mean, it is cool to have teams like them, independent teams, smaller independent teams, be good. I mean, that's what we want. Yet again, we want this game to be exciting. We want it to be fun. We want it to be interesting and unique. And when teams like UConn are good at football, it makes college football fun. So,
yeah, and I definitely want to point this out because I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. We have not one, not two, but 3 power conference teams being hosted by UConn. So I think that's really cool from that standpoint because we rarely do see a power conference team willing to go on the road and play one of these G5 or G6 teams, depending on what terminology that you want to use to refer to the Pac-12 that did just come in. So the fact that you do have a Maryland at home, you have a Syracuse at home, and a North Carolina at home, but these are not teams that had very much success over the course of last year, but they have a little bit more on the talent composite side of things than some of these other teams that they have on their schedule. I think that bodes well for them. The toughest game that I think is going to be on this schedule, I think the toughest 2 weeks that they're going to have is James Madison, Old Dominion. Those two both were incredible football teams last season. But the good news is again, you have those 2 games at home, and particularly with James Madison, we're looking under a brand new coaching staff, right? We're talking about Billy Napier at James Madison for the very first time. And the $1 million question with James Madison, for as incredible a program that they've been over the last few years, are we going to see more of Sunbelt Billy that provided Billy Napier with the opportunity to coach at Florida and get that coaching opportunity a few years ago? Or are we going to see a little bit more of Florida Billy at James Madison that ended up getting him fired at Florida this past offseason? I think that's going to be really fascinating to see from that standpoint. Old Dominion, that's been a team on the rise in the Sun Belt as well, but at the same time, no Colton Joseph. He transferred over to Wisconsin. What are they going to look like as well? One thing that I do want to point out in terms of this offense, regardless of who starts at quarterback, because you mentioned that is more of a pro-style offense, I would not be surprised if Kenji Christian, the running back that transferred in out of Toledo, he is someone that becomes the vocal point of the offense while maybe you get the quarterback acclimated as well as some of the other pieces that they brought in as well. This is a guy that had over 700 scrimmage yards and 5 touchdowns this past season at Toledo. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Kenji Christian ends up being the vocal point of the offense, regardless of who wins that starting job at quarterback.
Yeah, and I think Jason's got the right mindset here. I think they only recruited like 7 guys out of high school, and they're bringing in 50 transfer players. So in this new age, that's the way to win early, and I think he understands that. He's got a lot of longevity in the guys that he's bringing from Toledo, and then he added a couple pieces, and the quarterback from Tennessee. Some good defensive guys, and honestly, when I was looking at their offensive line, man, they've got size for their conference and for their, them independent for their level of play. They've got some big guys on the offensive line. Doesn't mean they're going to be fundamental, but it does mean that they've got size. If you can get those guys dialed in, yeah, this is a team that could end up winning 8-9 games again this season. I could see it happening for sure.
Yeah, and to go off of AT's point about size in the trenches, they did bring in 2. Bigger defensive lineman. Melvin Hill's the 3rd from Texas, and Jamel Howard Jr. from Wisconsin. They're both 300+ interior defensive linemen. I mean, we've said it plenty of times on the show before between all the speakers we have. Winning in the trenches is the number one key to victory. If you dominate the trenches on either side of the ball, your chances of victory significantly are higher. So I think controlling the trenches, I think those are 2 great additions. They also added safety Steve Miller from USC. I mean, if you watch their bowl game in the Fenway Bowl, they got torched in the secondary. So I think UConn definitely made some good additions in the portal. I had made a note about Kenji Christian, Jake. I think also with UConn losing Cam Edwards, I get it was a different coaching regime and everything like that, but that's a huge hole to fill in the backfield. Cam Edwards transferring to Michigan State is you're losing a 1,000+ yard rusher out of your backfield. So I think Kenji Christian is definitely a good stable option to have out of that backfield. Someone that you can rely on. What production you're going to get out of him. What he can bring to an offense. So I think combining both your points, if you get the offensive line up to speed along with the veteran running back from a system that he's familiar with, I think that's a recipe for, again, like AT said, that like 8-9 wins on the schedule for sure.
Yeah, and then one last thing that I definitely wanted to touch on in terms of some players that I'm certainly watching for on this UConn football team is I do think that this linebacking core for UConn, particularly their duo that they brought in through transfer portal, I think they have a chance to be pretty good as well. Whether you're talking about Kayvon Sherman, who had nearly 100 tackles combined over the course of last season. And then they also brought in the FCS transfer in John Lista out of Penn. So you already know he's a very smart guy, getting that Ivy League education, probably using some physics on the whiteboard in order to, have some great all-time pursuit. But this is a guy that was also a multi-year starter. And really the most valuable thing that you could have before anything else is experience. And they're certainly going to have some experience in that linebacking core as well. So they have a chance to be pretty solid to pretty good in the trenches. And you're looking at that for both sides of the ball. Again, it's just a matter of what do they get out of that quarterback position. You're probably not expecting a Joe Vacano, but as long as your quarterback is competent, UConn can definitely make some noise with what's laid in front of them. And their bye week split, pretty good. I mean, it's right in the middle of the year. You can't complain in terms of where this singular bye ends up being at.
No, not especially when you get UMass right out the gate out of that bye. You can kind of yet again, don't overlook anybody in this game. But if there was one team that anybody could overlook, I'd say it'd be UMass. And I hate to just keep pounding on them all season, but I think that's a good one for them to come out to get some experience before you go into probably the hardest slate that they have all year. When you go Air Force, North Carolina, James Madison, Old Dominion, back to back to back to back. It's not an easy slate for them there. And yeah, I think that's the best time for you to get a bye week, just like you said. And I mean, and they also it seems like they're going for those twitchy style wide receivers, which I love, those fast guys that I think for smaller programs, that's the best thing you can have. It's so hard to get somebody that's going to go make a bunch of, Ross type catches or Moss type catches. I mean, and it's really tough to find those guys because they're all at the big programs, but you can go find some insanely talented, fast slot type guys that can change a game for somebody like UConn, and they've added several of those. One to talk about is Emmanuel Ross, who's a former 4-star out of high school. I'm excited for them. This is going to be a team to watch, I think.
Yeah, and it's something that I always found fascinating, really looking at the biggest difference between like the power conference teams and really your G5 and your FCS teams. It's not your skill position guys, because no matter what level you go at, there is quality skill position guys at the wide receiver position, running backs, even to a degree. You can see quality quarterback play regardless of how low of division level you go into. Really, the biggest difference, if anything, is the trenches. But I think they're set up pretty nicely in the trenches. And as long as they remain healthy, because that's the $1 million thing, and UConn is maybe not one of those teams that has a ton of depth, which is a pervasive problem throughout the country given our current NIL era. As long as they can remain healthy, I think there is a pathway for them to have a successful season. We'll see what that record looks like. We're currently working through the the first look for all 137 FBS teams, so that I won't have an exact record prediction until March or April, to be honest with y'all. But I do think this UConn team, they certainly have some pieces to make some noise.
No doubt.
For sure.
Yeah. Someone that's also been making a tremendous amount of noise lately is Trinidad Chambliss. Yes, you heard that correctly. Trinidad Chambliss granted his 6th year of eligibility. He's going to be at Ole Miss. And he's going to be looking to tear up the SEC once again with Pete Golding. So you see the bottom ticker. No, your eyes do not deceive you. Trinidad Chambliss is going to be back at Ole Miss for the 2026 campaign. But unfortunately, one thing that will not be back for 2026, the Game Above Sports Bowl, like a girl in the country song, it's gone. And I don't know about you guys. I am bummed about what's happening to not only the Game Above Sports Bowl, but some of these other bowl games that are happening around the country.
It's sad. That's all I have to say about that. It's just sad. I mean, why get rid of bowl games? I mean, the people that hate bowl games don't watch college football. Why are you even watching a sport? That's yet again, we want this game to be unique. We want it to be interesting. When you tune on and you're watching a bowl game that's like a Tax Slayer or some insane company that you've never heard of in your entire life, that's what makes it fun, man. That's what I want to look into. And I hate it. I hate that they're getting rid of that. One thing I will say though that we heard announced today is that Idaho and Boise State are bringing back the rivalry game in 2031. So as we lose a bowl game, we at least get a rivalry game back. That's something that we can be looking forward to, even though we've got several years till it happens. So
who wouldn't want to watch the Gasparilla Bowl? Like,
come on,
like the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Who wouldn't want to see a bowl game on the teal field? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, and unless you're like a PS5 guy who doesn't want to watch the Xbox Bowl. We had the Xbox Bowl bless our TV screens for the first time this year. I mean, listen, I've seen some discourse on this over the last couple of days following the Game Above Sports Bowl being canceled, which I was honestly shocked about because it was one of the more well-intended bowl games that we've seen the last few years. This most recent one that we saw drew nearly 29 to 30,000 people in its bowl game. So I wasn't as surprised to see the LA Bowl go away, and I wasn't as surprised to see the Bahamas Bowl because I know they were having some issues with getting sponsorships, and in the case of the Bahamas Bowl, they were having some stadium issues. I was really sad to see because it's the only bowl game out in the Midwest, right? You look at the state of Texas and the number of bowl games they have 6 to 7 bowl games. I'm not joking. They have 6 to 7 bowl games in the state of Texas that they can look forward to. If you look at the Midwest and the northeastern part of the country combined, now that the Game Above Sports Bowl is gone, there's only 2 that the Northeast and the Midwest has combined, which is your Pinstripe Bowl and your Fenway Bowl. So I'm really disappointed, and I'm particularly disappointed in the folks that are completely okay with games going away. Because what else are you going to do in the month of December? Spend time with your family? Ridiculous. December's for college football, man.
I agree.
Who wants to do Christmas shopping?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't have time for anything except for college football during December, right? I mean,
exactly.
Right. I mean, come on.
Exactly.
We're talking about a bowl game that's as old as me, 29 years. I mean, that's tough. Maybe just a little bit older than I am, but it's tough to see, you know. So it's tough. I mean, we're gonna miss it. It's been something that I've been able to watch for a long time now, and that's tough. So
something that I've been brainstorming about this, and I think could keep them around. You got to add some incentivization for these players to play in the bowl games. Half of these players are already in the transfer portal, or declaring for the draft, or just sitting out because they just straight up don't want to play because it's not worth the risk of getting injured. You have to incentivize these players some way. So if you get like an extra bonus NIL wise, or you get a brand deal with whatever the company, like whatever the sponsor of the bowl game is, like I don't care what you have to do is, but you have to incentivize these players to actually want to play in the bowl games. And that goes along with fixing the college football calendar, like with the transfer portal and everything. I get if you're settled on wanting to transfer and you don't want to play in the bowl game, I completely understand that. But to allow a bulk of a team, say 40, 50 players of a team, just get up and leave right before a bowl game, like we can't allow that. We got to put some restrictions on that.
I agree.
Yeah, and something that I saw floated in the immediate discourse after it was announced that the Detroit Quick Lane Bowl, formerly known as now most recently known as the Game Above Sports Bowl, ends up being canceled, is that some of these folks are okay with bowl games going away because of the number of 6-6 and 5-7 teams in a handful of cases do getting an opportunity to enjoy bowl season. And the school of thought for some of those people is if you remove enough of these bowl games, you can push the requirement up to where now you have to be 7-5 or 8-4 in some cases in order to make it into a bowl game and create that extra incentive and make it feel a little bit more meaningful to get a bowl game opportunity. I disagree with that assumption. I know that some folks don't love the idea of seeing a team that finishes 500 in the regular season, or in a couple of cases below 500, get into a bowl game. I know that's certainly not ideal by any means, but I'm also not freaking out by any means either if those types of teams do end up getting in. And if you do have an issue with it, one thing that you could do instead of removing bowl games is create a more clear-cut pathway for the FCS programs that prove themselves at the FCS level. Give them a more clear-cut pathway to jump up to the FBS, because if you have enough teams at the FBS level, you can push that requirement up to that 7-5 and 8-4 kind of record requirement that some people are wanting for, without removing the bowl games, because I think we all agree here, bowl games are awesome. And it sucks that we are seeing some of these bowl games go away.
Can't hate on the 5-7 teams that get into the bowl. Just can't do it. Can't do it. Right. I mean, that's it. Can't do it. If it wasn't for that, then I wouldn't have watched my boys get dominated in the freaking Mayo Bowl this year. So I thought I was excited about it until the game happened. But it's exciting. I'm on the same page. I want more college football at the end of the year. I don't care. I want decent teams to play other decent teams in other conferences, and I want good teams to play other good teams in other conferences. It's one of the only times we get to see that happen. And yeah, I'm all for it. I think one thing that, and I know the Pop-Tart Bowl is a big one and they've got a lot of money, but I think one thing they do really well is they merch the heck out of the guys that come there. They leave with bags and glasses and all kinds of Pop-Tart branded stuff. And it makes it fun for the players. And I'll say the same thing. I can speak for Mississippi State because I paid attention to it, but Duke Mayo did a fantastic job of that as well. They were giving our guys all kinds of opportunities. They had them on the racetrack a couple days before the game. And it really made it a lot of fun for the players that went out there. And so that's what that's all about. It's supposed to be camaraderie for the team. It gives you something to play for at the end of the year. It gives you 30 days of extra practice, which I think is insanely massive, especially in this modern day where you can have some guy. It keeps guys on the team. It keeps guys on the field, and it gives them more time to go into the next season. And yet again, it should be fun for the guys involved. And I think if you have more brands that take advantage of that, then you'll have more bowl games pop up, and you'll have a lot of guys really respect the 6-6 teams that make it, the 7-5 teams that make it. So I think it's important that we keep it that way.
To piggyback off that point, AT, I think a lot of it goes with branding and sponsoring and promoting these bowl games. Pop-Tart is already a huge brand as it is. The fact that they promote it by 2 live mascots that go in a toaster at the end of the game, and you can actually eat the mascot after the game, let alone it's like I get to watch a Pop-Tart get toasted life size at the end of the game. Like, and they decorate the end zones and they get cool helmet decals and everything. Like they just do a great job at promoting what the bowl game is. So I think if a lot of other bowl games take that model, actually hone in on whatever the sponsor is or where the location is. So say if it's like in Las Vegas, I'm not telling you to gamble, but if you do it like a casino style, like if make the field look cool and everything, a special uniform or like a special jersey, a helmet decal, whatever it is, at least you get to look cool doing it. So absolutely. And another point that I'm going to bounce off of what Jake was saying about the FCS teams. I hate to say it. Let's go soccer style here. Promotion and relegation. You make these bowl games essentially promotion relegation. Like, not saying all the way down to FCS level, but put like a 6-6, 7-5 team against a upper level FCS team, a North Dakota State, for instance. See how they handle it.
Yeah, who would want to watch that?
I feel like majority of the population would actually be pretty surprised at how those middle tier FBS teams handle upper tier FCS teams like in North Dakota State. So that's just something I brainstormed for a second. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
When you mentioned that, Jack, I was like, oh, that'd be awesome if we could get FCS guys in bowl games. I don't know what their playoff schedule looks like. That was the only thing I was thinking is I don't know when their playoff ends versus the bowl game season, but it would be the coolest thing if you could take the FCS playoff teams and just have 6 of them come play some bowl games over here against some 6-6, 7-5 teams. Like you said, Reed, I think you'd be surprised how many of those teams win. And it's yet again, it's all about understanding the sport. I think what Pop-Tart does really well is they understand college football. It's madness, it's crazy, it's unique, it's different, and they do such a good job of marketing to that. If everybody would take that approach, and yet again, I watched the Mayo Bowl, but I've always thought it was fantastic. They dump mayonnaise on the coach at the end of the game. I mean, it's those type of things that make this sport so much fun. And we just need more of that. We need more sponsors to understand what they've got here, because they really got lightning in a bottle for marketing opportunities, and they just don't take advantage of it.
Yeah, and I know that certainly the Dukes Mayo's folks, they're not the only food related people that really lean into it. Not just like in Dukes Mayo's, not just the Pop-Tarts, but how about the famous Idaho Potato Bowl and that winning coach? Imagine winning a bowl game and then proceeding to enjoy yourself some Five Guys French fries. I mean, it only takes 5. We're only 2 guys short for making a phenomenal burger and fries here on the show. Can you also imagine some of these other sponsors upped it up a notch? I know I think Boeing sponsors one of the the military affiliated bowls down in Texas. Imagine the winning program winning a replica F-35 or something like that. I mean that's the kind of chaotic energy that I need these sponsors to have, and that's what makes bowl season so special. And frankly, why I'm so sad to see some of these bowl games go away, because we lose some of that connective tissue in terms of what makes college football special and what brings the average person into enjoying college football.
Absolutely, because there's so many eyes on the Pop-Tart Bowl just for the fact that it's going to be crazy madness in the marketing realm, in the mascot realm. I think it's always my favorite when you've got the one in the background flashing himself or whatever. I think that's hilarious.
Hey, trophy for the Military Bowl, you get a tank on your campus, somewhere on your campus, and it's as a bunch of decals of your team. You get a life-size tank on your campus. How about that?
Listen, I can get down with a replica Sherman. I mean, F4 Sherman, that's a beauty.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cheez-It's doing a good. I'll give Cheez-It some credit too. I feel like they're figuring it out here. We need more brands like that that can have fun with it. I think once you have fun with it, yet again, that's what makes college football great. That's why we watch it, just talk about it all the time.
Just make a pool full of Cheez-Its next to the end zone. That's what you gotta do.
That's all you gotta do, and everybody's gonna watch it and talk about it. So
All right, boys. That's gonna just about wrap us up here tonight. We had a jam-packed show here tonight. We talked about more than I thought we were gonna even talk about with the Trinidad Chambliss stuff going down. But thank you guys so much for watching this jam-packed show. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, somebody else's YouTube. Listen, speaking of all that stuff, the majority of you guys that are watching the live show right now are not subscribed to the channel or following any of my other socials. And all I'm asking is, what are we doing? What are we actually doing? Just go ahead, get that taken care of for it only takes a few seconds to do it. And then while you're at it, hit that damn like button for me too. It really warms up my cold dead heart. It warms up Reed's heart. And most importantly, it makes AT forget that Trinidad Chambliss is going to Ole Miss. So if you can do all those things for me, man, I'll truly appreciate it. But I'm your main host, Jake of College Football Red Zone, joined by my right-hand man, Reed Napper, as well as AT, also known as Tampa 2 College Football, over on the Twitter and YouTube platform. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good night. Take care, everybody.
Hotty toddy.